Hi everyone. This video is for people who, like me, live in the tropics where Christmas time, the holiday season, is also monsoon season. And if you do live in those regions, you know that the rain and wind can be very hard on your decorations. So here's some of the tips and tricks that we have picked up in our years of decorating, and we decorate a lot. So hopefully it will help you out, and if you have any other ideas, feel free to comment on them below. Here's how the basic science behind how the majority of the shorts occur. So you've got your two connections that plug into each other, and there's really a small gap. Even if they're as tightly closed as you can get them, there's always a small gap. And then you've also got the ground. So if it's raining really heavily, all this rain eventually fills up this gap. And when it does that, and then it connects to the ground, all the power that's going through goes out the bottom. Basically, your wires become grounded, and that's what causes the short. You can see, even though these are totally exposed, they generally don't short out because they're not connected to the ground at all. This one also doesn't give us too much trouble because, first off, except for right there, it's really hard for the rain to connect the plug to the ground, and also because the tree gives some natural protection from the direction that the rain comes from. Here's the first option for what to do when you've got one of these really big plugs. As you can see, we've got double 4-directional ones. And so you just cut holes into the plastic bag to stick the plugs through, and that does shelter it a lot from the rain, but honestly it's a lot of work, and so I prefer the second method that I'll show you. For this one, you just take a reusable plastic container of any sort. It could be what you store food in. This one is generally used for school supplies. And then you cut holes in it like this, and then you can stick the plug through here, and then they all come together on the inside. And then, because they're built slightly above the bottom of the container, that helps keep the plug itself off the ground. You can always just wrap it with plastic wrap like this, but this is honestly a very ineffective method, and so you'll still end up getting a lot of shorts. For your regular just two cords connecting together like extension cords, if you can get them off the ground, that's really good. So like this actually works because it does keep it off the ground. But if you're a bit more antsy about it, you can always use this other method where you make some sort of shelter for it. This is made of plexiglass from all the different face shields that keep breaking and getting thrown out. I just cut them up on a table saw and then glued them together with a hot glue gun like this. As you can see, again, it's cut so that way the cords sit inside and the cords are off the ground. Plenty of room. And they've got this overhead protector which helps keep the cords themselves from getting covered in water. I cut this out of some sort of plastic. It's the same basic principle. You just fold it together and then you use tape to have it keep its shape, and that helps do the exact same thing as the plexiglass for cheaper. Here's a nice little trick for if, like us, you have a large fan for a large inflatable and that fan keeps dying. Instead of replacing the fan, which can get pretty expensive, if you get a hot air blower, make sure that it's on cold though. That can generally do what you need for a lot cheaper. But again, make sure your air dryer is on cold. Obviously, if you can, try to keep it under as much shelter as possible. Here's a nice little shelter tent that we use, and it happens to work perfectly for the setup that we have. So if you can incorporate that shelter into your yard's design, that of course makes everything look more beautiful. Science fact for you: the high altitude winds that bring the rain clouds are generally pretty constant. They may change depending on the season of the year, but throughout the season, they generally come from the same direction. In my neighborhood's case, it's that way, the west. I could just look at those hills, and if I see them being covered by rain, then I know that's going to hit here in about 20 minutes. So if you can figure out which direction that rain is coming from in your neighborhood, then you can plan your rain defenses accordingly. The final option for dealing with the rain is, if you know that's going to rain heavily, just turn everything off. There's no power charge flowing through the system. You won't have a short. And then once you give the connections a chance to dry out after the rain, it'll work just fine. So something else you got to deal with is the wind. Right now, it's sort of gusty, but it's not as bad as it can get during monsoon season. So with that, you of course need your thick stakes, good solid metal ones, or even heavy duty plastic ones. And they need to be able to stick in the ground really well. Now if you look, another little science thing for you, your anchoring ability with your string is better the more angle that you have. Over here you can see a really weak aluminum stake, and it's starting to get pulled out of the ground because it doesn't really have much by way of grabbing power. So honestly, this one's gonna get pulled out pretty soon. So basically this principle is that if the anchor on a ship were going straight down, when the ship gets moved sideways, that pulls the anchor right out of the ground and the ship floats away. But when the anchor is at an angle like this, then when the ship is going this way, the force is going this way, and the anchor drags along the bottom, keeping it from moving, or at least slowing it down. You want the exact same thing to happen with your decorations. You want to make sure that you've got as much of this angle as you can get, so that way when the wind is blowing, your inflatable anchors don't get moved. Over here you can see one of these guys keeps getting pulled out of his slot, even though we've got rope tied around the tree and stakes holding his feet down. They're just not quite good enough. Sometimes you just gotta decide whether or not it's worth having that particular inflatable in that location. So last, I'd like to cover this topic because I haven't been able to find it on the internet, and that is these portable power generators, which are often connected to portable solar panels. I've got a Goal Zero Yeti 500X, simply because that's what's available in this region. That's not product placement. And I got it because I wanted to put up an inflatable in that field across the street, but I didn't want to have to haul a heavy generator or run a power cord across the road. So I was concerned when I first got it that the inflatable would overpower it, or that it would run the battery down too fast, but I actually found that about an hour's worth of running the inflatable only took down the percentage of the charge about 1%. So I haven't really experimented too much beyond that, but if you're looking to cut down on your electricity costs, this is an option that you can look into. It's pretty effective. I would definitely say it's worth more research if that's the sort of thing you're interested in.